What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to help you build a winning game plan when it comes to match play. A lot of people run into issues where they know what they want to do, but they don't quite know how to put the pieces together as it pertains to what you need to do on the court against certain opponents. So in this video, we're going to give you a foolproof way to come up with a winning strategy against most players as long as you have the skills you need. Let's get into it. So when you're trying to put together a winning strategy on court, there are certain steps you have to follow. You don't have to necessarily have specific skills, but there is a methodology to getting the plan together. Step one is evaluation. Evaluation is usually done during the warm-up or the first game or two when you're playing a match. Evaluation is going to happen when you're rallying with the person back and forth. You're looking to see what shots they favor. Do they come to the net really quick during the warm-up? Do they not take volleys or overheads at all? Do they stay back at the baseline? Are they favoring their backhand over their forehand? You need to be really paying attention to those details as you're working in the beginning of the ball. Obviously, you're warming up your own strokes, but what you can do is hit to their forehand a little bit more, see if it breaks down. Hit to their backhand, see if it breaks down. Hit drop shots, see what their movement is looking like. The first thing we're doing in the evaluation stage is literally just trying to see if there's any obvious piece of information that we could take from the other side of the net and apply to our game plan. Most people, they focus very much on themselves when they're warming up. They want to make sure they feel good, but you also have to take into account that there is a person that's going to have a plan on the other side, and you want to see how what they do is going to affect you. Step two of the evaluation is seeing what things they're actually doing well. If you're playing somebody and they hit the ball flat and hard, make sure you take that into account. If they're rallying and they hit heavy, or they prefer to hit slice backhands versus topspin backhands, all those things can be taken into account and be really useful pieces of information if you're actually trying to build a plan rather than just hit the ball back and forth. So when you jump on court, don't waste that first initial 10-minute warm-up and use that little gap of time to actually begin to formulate the plan that you're going to be using when you play against that opponent. Step two in building the plan is testing. This is what's going to happen in the first game or two of the match. Testing means what is the information that you took when you were doing the warm-up, start to actually see it under pressure. So for example, if you thought the person's backhand was stronger than their forehand, when you go into the serve and when you go into the return, actually hit to that side of the court and see how it holds up under pressure, because what you do in the warm-up doesn't inherently always transfer over to what happens when the points are actually being tallied. A lot of people will actually get a little tight or tense, and their whole game plan or their whole stroke mechanics may change as soon as the match starts. I've seen it a bunch of times where people look like superstars during the warm-up, and then they're a whole different person as soon as the first point starts. So you want to test and see what stuff is actually consistent from the warm-up to the first few games. Now in the testing phase, what you're also going to be doing is trying to highlight your strengths. You're going to try to use your strong forehand to hit to their weak backhand. You're going to try to use your heavy ball to bounce up high where it looks like they don't like it based on the information you took during the warm-up. When you start highlighting your strengths, what you're also going to do at the same time is you're going to try to hide as many weaknesses as you have. Likewise, if you're not the person that likes to take balls really high, you're going to try to move and really make it not as obvious that that's something that's bothering you on the court. A lot of people will just kind of let the ball come to them and do whatever it does. The goal here is to make yourself as obvious on the strengths and as hidden on the weaknesses as possible, while still trying to pick on what's going on the other side of the court. So when you're playing them, again, I'll use forehands and backhands as an example. If your forehand's super strong, you want to hit your forehand to their backhand because you decided their backhand is their weakness. The trick here, and this is one of the biggest things that people kind of get caught up with, don't make hiding your weaknesses obvious. You need to hit the shot. If your backhand's your weakness, don't run all the way to the doubles alley to not hit your backhand. Use your backhand so that your weaknesses don't become blatant. It's okay if they can see that you favor your forehand, but you don't want to make it look like you're avoiding your backhand, which is two completely different things. So whatever your weaknesses are, hide them, but don't put them in a position where they're being masked. Those are two different things. Hiding something that's weak is different than masking it and putting a band-aid over it and making it look like it's not there at all. If it's there, it's there. You'll miss a backhand here and there, and the person might not even think it's a big deal unless you make a big deal out of it. So don't make it super obvious that you're trying to avoid something, and just really focus on putting the pressure on highlighting what's going wrong on their side of the court. The last step to formulating the plan is going to be adjust. So everything that you thought in the beginning of the match might not be 100% true. So you might have thought that their backhand was weak, and it might just be a shot that it took a while for them to warm up. You might have thought that they were slow, and it just means their body wasn't quite up to the speed that it was supposed to be at the time. What you're going to do when you take in the information that's happened over a few games is then readjust the information. Biggest mistake a lot of people make at this stage is sticking to a failing plan. I've seen people who will say, I'm going to attack their backhand, and they'll attack that backhand religiously. And the problem with attacking the backhand religiously is you're letting the person kind of groove the stroke in. And by the time you notice it, you've already lost a couple games on what was originally something that you were supposed to be picking on. Now it's getting you in trouble. The biggest thing that kind of gets in the way with people doing this is they don't pay attention to the fact that things are in fact changing. They'll take it as kind of a one-off, or they'll take it as something that's kind of just random and only happening here and there. If there's an adjustment that needs to be made, you have to pay attention to it and not be stubborn. Don't go down with the ship trying to play plan A because you don't want to change to plan B. Make adjustments within your play style. Like if you're a hard hitter, don't necessarily start pushing the ball over, but make adjustments that fit the way you want to play. If you want to play an aggressive game style, if you want to play a defensive play style, that's fine. Stick to it, but make adjustments within the play style. Quick side note on that one, and this is one of the things I see recurring with people who do this often. Do not favor your strength over the tactic. Don't let the fact that you have a shot that you like, or a shot that you're super confident in, inflate your thought process and make you feel like that's the thing that fits the situation. I've seen many a time where people are like, well, my forehand down the line is my best shot. Great, but if your forehand down the line is playing into the strength of the person on the other side, you might not need to use it in this scenario as often as you would usually use it against other people. So if you have a strength that you want to play to, make sure the strength that you play to also fits within the tactic that you need to use against that person. Example here would be, if my forehand down the line is really good, but I'm playing against a left-handed person and their forehand cross court is even better, it makes no sense for me to put myself in a disadvantage, I don't even know if that's a word, but a disadvantaged position by favoring my forehand down the line when that person is going to get forehand cross courts that are going to put me on the run immediately more often than it's going to pay off for me. Now, it doesn't mean I'm not going to use my forehand down the line. I just have to be really conscious of when I'm going to use it and not just use it just because it's the shot I like to do. So if you have shots that you favor, make sure they also fit inside the plan that you want to use. The last thing that comes with building a winning strategy is be prepared for it to not work the first time. And when I say that, I'm not talking about like winning this match. What we just talked about through this whole video is something that actually takes practice to do properly. You have to have a systematic thought process that helps you get to the right answer. And then I also mentioned you have to have the tools you need. For example, most of my students that I teach don't have the tools to beat me yet. So you have to have the things that are needed for the opponent across the net. If the person on the other side can handle serves that are up to 100 miles an hour and you can't go higher than that, then serving isn't going to be the thing that you use to gain the advantage. If you don't have the tool you need, then that's something you have to do before. So when I say building the tactics, build the tactics around the strengths you have, but you also have to recognize when somebody on the other side of the net has the skills they need to make you more uncomfortable. Then, once you've kind of taken that into account, it makes it easier to build a skilled plan around things, because you won't be upset that there's things you don't have. You'll actually be able to figure out how to work with the things that you do have. You can't go, well, I would have won if I could serve harder. I would have won if I was faster. That's not going to happen on that day. Those are things you have to work on and build into. But what you can do is say, I don't have that skill I need right now. What's something else I can highlight that would help me put pressure on them? And then build your tactics around that right there. rather than kind of letting frustration build. And then, like I said earlier, being stubborn and trying to go down with the ship by doing the things you want to do rather than the things that will work. Way too often, people put themselves in a hole because they don't recognize that a plan is failing until it's already failed. Now, to wrap all this up, as I said from the beginning of this little thing, you have to be prepared for this to not work the first time you do it, because you have to start building it into being able to do it fast. You notice the things you need to notice in the warm-up. You play a game or two and you recognize the things that are going to change. You make your adjustment and then you roll with that plan until they give you something that shows you need to make a change. A tennis match has a lot of ups and downs, and it's usually the person who makes the last adjustment that wins. So my opponent's playing well, I make the adjustment, I go a little bit ahead of them. They make the adjustment, they go a little ahead of me. Then we go back and forth. But if they don't make the adjustment, I stay at this level and I just stay with that plan until I win. But it's usually going to be a little bit of back and forth if the people that are playing are fairly even. And if that's the case, it's all about paying attention to being able to make adjustments as quick as possible so that you don't get yourself in a hole that you can't dig yourself out of. But that's going to wrap this video up, guys. I hope it was helpful. Use the things that we just talked about. It will take time to build the skill, but if you know somebody that would benefit from this, send it off to them. Again, like and subscribe and send it off to people because we're trying to get to 2,500 so we can do these collab videos. But that wraps it up. We'll see you guys in the next one.